to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone here for public participation. So we're covering the REC and DPW warrant articles tonight. So we'll move right into the first one, which is Article 7-9, the leaf back tow behind. The first 5 we have covered in previous meetings, and hopefully the discussion will be short. We'll see if that works. Roger, do we have a subcommittee update?
Nothing new since we spoke last. This is $20,000 for a tow-behind leaf vacuum to replace a 10-year-old vacuum that's mounted on the back of a truck. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve.
Very good. All right, do we have any additional commentary from our previous meeting?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All right, so this is warrant article 7-9, leaf back tow behind for $20,000. And we can vote by show of hands. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Hello. Frank, put your hand down. Put it down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stay. You only get to vote once.
I was just saying hi to my buddy here.
All right, that's, let me just double check here. That's 9-0-0. Motion passes. Did I get that right? Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just
yes,
real quick,
certainly.
maybe we could just tell whoever may be watching, just so they don't think, we have discussed these warrants that.
Yes, good
has
point.
discussed these
In a
warrants.
meeting several weeks ago, when we talked about the rec department operating budget, we did talk about first 5 of the rec department warrant articles. So that's
Thank you.
why, that is why
I just don't
our.
want anybody to think, who may be watching, that we're just blanketing out. We
We
have
had
discussed these
very
items.
lengthy discussions then, which is hopefully why we won't need to be as lengthy today.
Correct.
Thank you for highlighting that. And I should also mention we have Brendan Egan here with us. Yes.
Is that, this Ways and Means meeting tonight's just going to be all votes on warrants that have already been discussed?
No, the first 5 we've discussed with the budget. The rest will be our first discussion of everything. And I'll mention when we get to that point.
Okay.
But
And
thanks.
feel free to ask questions.
Yes, this isn't to forestall any additional questions or comments you may have had since last time. That's perfectly fine.
And we have the chairman of the commission with us. Yes, Dave Noy.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Great.
now I can see you. All right.
We're off to a good start.
Oh, it's all good.
It's a rough night. We have Article 710 now, the skid steer. Roger.
For $68,000. This is a new piece of equipment that is going to be more effective for the Recreation Department to maintain various areas, including the ball field. They do have larger tractors with larger buckets, but they're harder to maneuver in tight spaces. And this is a very effective piece of equipment. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Okay, any additional questions or concerns here?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Yep.
Second.
Go ahead, Rob. All right, we can have a discussion after that.
Is there any reason why you chose tracks instead of tires?
Yes, the tracks are easier on grass surfaces, which is what we'll be working on a lot on ball fields.
Even
So-
with the amount of weight?
Yep, it's how you turn, the operator, obviously, right? You have to be not as aggressive, but the wheels dig in more. The tracks level out the turning radius a little
Okay,
better.
you know more than I do. I just had to ask the question.
Sure.
Move to approve?
Yep, we already have a motion on that. Any additional
I second
questions?
it.
All right,
Yeah.
great. It's been doubly moved. This is for Article 7-10 skid steer for $68,000. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 9-0-0. Motion passes. We're now on Article 7-11, the zero-turn mower. Roger.
Yes, this is for $16,500. This is a new mower, or actually it's a mower to replace a 2012 Gravely mower that has required frequent maintenance. That mower will be retained for use, light use at Simons Park, but it really isn't in a condition to be used every day during the mowing seasons. During the summer, 2 mowers are used full-time to maintain the ball fields in addition to larger mowers, and this is an important piece of equipment to keep the grass in check. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Okay, any comments on this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? It's 900. All right, now we're on Article 7-12, ball field groomer. Roger?
Right, so this ball field groomer is I think it's replacing an existing groomer. It's $40,000 to buy a piece of equipment that's particularly customized to level the ball fields and keep the infields in good shape. And the subcommittee voted 2-0 to support it.
Any comments on this? I'm sorry. Yes, Mike, thank you for signing.
I'm just curious, how many ball fields do we have that we use this on?
I was just counting them in my head. I think we're up to 15 ball fields, that are either skinned, so all infield clay or mixed, or like the Little League style that has grass on the infield and then the infield mix for paths, base paths and pitcher's mound. And so up to 15, I believe it is now.
And is this replacing another unit?
So we've always, when we've replaced one, we've kept the old one because if one breaks down, we groom ball fields every day from, well, they started a couple weeks ago getting them ready through August and then smaller amounts in September. So we always keep one around. Our backup is gone, dead, and they rebuilt the current one to get us through this spring. So we will keep that one as long as it holds on. But it's been 12 years since we've had an updated one.
Thank you.
15 years old.
It's okay. All set, thanks.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
Second.
thank you. Just for the record, Chris Campbell has joined us, so the votes should add up to 10 now. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? That's 10-0. Next is Article 7-13, playground renovation at Wildmere. Roger?
Yes, so this is $190,000 to basically replace all the equipment and rearrange things at the Wildmere Park. The backup includes a sample photo of the initial set of playground equipment to put there. I think last time when we had a discussion, there was a discussion about trying to make it accessible and making sure there was accessible play areas, and generally making sure that the location of the equipment on the lot, it's a fairly small lot, does not necessarily consume all the space. There may be some other things that we want to put on that space before. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Discussion on this?
Chairman, motion to approve.
Second. Thank you. This is for Article 7-13, playground renovation at Wildmere, for $190,000. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? Passes 10-0. I think I forgot to mention the previous one, the ball field groomer, was for $40,000. Okay, we're now moving on to articles we have not covered before at all. This is Article 21, the will of Marshall Simons. Roger?
There is not a lot to say about it, and in fact, the subcommittee neglected to discuss it in depth or take a vote because it is so familiar. This is an article to first of two readings of the will of Marshall Simons to accept $77,644.31. And this year, there's a list of things that they expect to use these funds on, that is discussed with the trustees, including accessibility improvements, therapeutic recreation staff, modular trailer, using some of the funds for special events, and a scholarship fund for programs in the park.
Would you like to add anything to that, Brendan?
Nope.
Very good. Discussion on this item?
This is the first reading, right?
Yes,
First reading.
so this will be the first reading. Second reading will be in September.
So we cannot officially get the money until September. All right, further discussion? Chris?
So the modular trailer for the summer therapy program, where does that go?
It goes behind the Visco building on the asphalt at the backside, just off of it. And then we actually bring in a second smaller modular trailer. And we started working with the schools two years ago. They do some of their summer OT, PT. That way the participants can still participate in the program, and they get pulled out for their 20 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is, and they can go and participate there. So we've been working with the schools on that. But they both go on the backside behind the Visco building.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you. This is Article 21, will of Marshall Simons to accept $77,644.31, our first reading of two. Those in favor of accepting money, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? That's 10-0-0. Our next one is Article 27, land water conservation. Roger?
All right. This one is quite a bit more interesting. So there is a rather major plan proposed for Overlook Park that would propose to use $2,300,000. Moment proposed to borrow, but we'll come back to that. So the proposal is to develop the site up at Overlook Park, which used to be a Nike missile site and has until recently hosted recreation maintenance and some other things. And it's not a very accessible site, so that this is to fund phase one of a two-phase plan to add a driveway up to the top of the hill and parking so that people can drive up, and there'll be accessible parking places up at the top of the hill, and some trails going up the hill so that it's easy to use it for recreation. At the top of the hill in Overlook Park is also a nexus where it connects to the trails into Little Brook Conservation Area. So this is hoping to open up the conservation area. At the moment, it's only got like three ways to get in. Overlook Park is on Chapter 97 land, which very much restricts its use to conservation uses. And so all of the proposed plan is operating within those restrictions. And I could probably go into more detail, but it might be more effective if Brendan were to present the project and anything leading up to getting this done. Oh, I didn't mention that there is a grant proposal that has been submitted to a state fund that may provide as much as $1 million to offset the costs. So, Brendan, sorry.
Thank you. So I won't give the history of the property, but what we are looking to do is to completely renovate what used to be the Parks and Recreation Department maintenance garage. You may know we have a building up there currently that houses storage for the Recreation Program Division, and some small equipment for our maintenance division. And then there is another theater that's leased out to the Burlington, another building that's leased out to the Burlington Players. We decided, as we looked at this property and the moving out of the maintenance facility there, what are we going to do with this beautiful piece of land that's been probably underutilized over the years? It's been utilized for its purpose, but for the general public, it's been underutilized. We applied for a land and water conservation Fund grant, which is a reimbursement program administered by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs on behalf of the National Park Service. So it's a federal grant, but administered by the state. We are one of 11 communities in in Massachusetts that applied. We are waiting, hopefully this week, to hear. It is, as Roger mentioned, a reimbursement grant of up to $1 million. Phase one of this project would create, I think everyone had a map, but in the bottom area, an open field for outdoor recreation use, a paved walking trail, accessible walking trail around there, a new playground. It brings stormwater management onto the property, something that's never been there in the past. There's 3 or 4 different stormwater management areas. It gets rid of a lot of the impervious surface and replaces it with grass, but it does delineate a parking lot, something that's not there now. It's kind of a free-for-all. And then it creates an accessible trail system through the woods that will be stone dust with a binder in it to kind of harden it up. And it will go up the hill. So if you're familiar with the site where the current playground is, it'll go up to the top of the hill through the woods there, winding back and forth. The driveway that is currently there, or the road that goes up, will be completely taken out and redone. There will be 4 accessible parking spaces, 3 accessible parking spaces, 2 halfway up and 1 all the way at the top. And the road will be open for people with mobility issues that would like to go to the top, can't walk up the trail, and would like to park up there. It's not a free-for-all parking. We'll have signage there. There is an accessible walking loop around the top. There is a paved section and then more of a trail section that will be the stone dust as well with the binder. We'll be replanting trees on the site, and we will also clear the scrub that's growing in on the hill to create a more open sledding hill there. And let me see. Oh, there will be wayfinding signage around the park, so people have an idea where they're going and what trails take what direction. And then there is a connection to the Little Brook Conservation Area, which is a 35-acre conservation parcel located right next to it that has marked and unmarked trails throughout. And as Roger mentioned, this is phase 1. There will be a future phase when we can fit that in, and some of the things that are included in that are a pump track, if anyone knows what that is. It's like a bike track, but it's, you use your momentum. You start with a couple pedal, like downhill. You're familiar with it, right? And then you use your momentum to go around the track, something we're looking at in the lower area. And then a amphitheater on the hillside behind the building that the players utilize. So we would have some tiered seating in the hillside that would be accessible as well. One of the big things with the grant is they were looking for accessible outdoor recreation. And that's something we really hit on. And we worked with our engineers, Weston and Sampson, on this conceptual plan, had public outreach. They were able to provide feedback at one of our special events, the tree lighting. We had over 2,000 people there. And then we put information out, surveys out on our social media. We put them in different town buildings, emailed them directly out. The neighborhood has a impromptu or unofficial chat group, and that it got shared through there. We got a lot of ideas from the neighborhood. So that's kind of the phase 1 of the project in a nutshell. Be happy to answer any questions. It also, we meet some environmental justice neighborhood criteria. There's really no outdoor recreation services on that side of town. You know, we have Wildmere Park down below, that we talked about a new playground there, and we have a small playground up here, but really, there's no connection to nature for the residents in that area, no public connection, so this will be an outdoor recreation hub for us. And really, we're hoping that it will be, just a new jewel in the system of parks in Burlington.
Did the subcommittee have a vote on this?
Yes, we voted 2-0 to support.
Okay, I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Nope, I didn't say it. It's in the minutes. I just didn't say it.
If only I had read them. Okay, discussion on this topic? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's no ball fields or anything like that? It's just a park with like a playground area for the most part?
Correct. Yes, nature trails, accessible trails to the top. So during the planning, we obviously looked at the neighborhood and how small the roads are, right? And really what could fit up there. We tried to be conscious of the neighborhood that it was going into and not trying to draw major amounts of traffic.
Just kind of looking at the picture, I'm guessing that there's really not enough area to put ball fields in there, or would you say that's not true?
So the smaller area or the lower field area, which I think is number 1 on the diagram, I don't think it could, a small soccer type field, I don't think you could get a ball field, baseball, softball field in there. But really, we're looking to make the property, a great outdoor recreation facility, not necessarily sports.
And the, just curious, the Little Brooks Conservation Area, I've never been there, but there are trails in there. How would you access that?
So at the top of the hill, up at, I think it's number 8, the diagram, it's circled 8, there's a connection there. And then down below, there's a trail that comes off, I forget the name of the street that's parallel to Edgemere, but if you come up to the end of that road, it's a dead end at the property. There is access through there that connect to trails.
Oh, okay, so if I wanted to go check that out, I would go the street beyond Edgemere.
I would go to Edgemere, and you could go to the top of the hill there, all the way to the top, and go to your far right, and there's a break in the fence, and it goes down, and there's a whole system of trails out there.
Looks like Overlook is the next street over.
I thought it was Glen.
I think it's Glen. Edgemere comes into the facility, and then there's houses, I think it's
Glen is perpendicular to Edgemere.
Glen's the next road.
Yeah.
So this is
There's a trail
down here,
at the
right?
end of Hillsdale as well.
Excuse me?
You can go to the end of Hillsdale,
Okay.
This
trail
is
into the
here,
woods,
and then this is conservation area.
And it comes out over
Glen is right across this way.
by the old, some of the trails come out over by the old Donahue's in that area, furniture, over to that.
Okay, thank you.
And there are maps of the conservation area on the town website.
Additional questions? Doug?
Kind of maintenance is it going to require as far as additional, like, do you have the crew to take care of it?
Yes, so we already maintain it. We cut the grass on the hill and around the playground. We are adding a little more grass, but I think we're cleaning up the areas too, so it will be easier to maneuver a large mower around. But we will have to do a little more maintenance on the stone dust paths, just stay on top of those as we go through, get into year 2 and things like that.
And parking, I think you talked about it. Are you adding space? I know you're delineating parking, but is there going to be
I don't know if there's ever been a number put on how many cars you can squeeze in up there, right? But there are a total of 39 parking spots, and 5 of them.
Okay. Yeah, you defined 2 things. You defined a jewel and a big access for the town, but then we don't want it to be too popular because there's no parking over there. This will crowd the streets, so that's a tricky one. Okay.
There are, if you look at the diagram, there are quite a number of parking places. He said
The lower down though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a great initiative, first of all. The 2.3 million, that's for Phase 1, correct? And Phase 2, which we don't even have a prediction on the timing of that.
Correct.
And do you have any idea what the price point of that might be?
If we did both of these together, we'd be over 5 million.
Okay, so this is Phase 1, which is everything you've described in detail tonight. And the matching grant the grant is up to a match of $1 million?
Correct.
Is that contingent upon you said you'd know within a few weeks, but is that contingent on our funding the project fully, the 2.3?
Yes, without matching that, we're asking for 2.3, the match would be 2 million, right? We have to pay they'll match $1 million of what we put up, so we'd have to put up another $1 million for them to give $1 million.
So, okay.
Similar to the park grant for Wildwood. Yes.
But I want to just get the financing straight. There was a recommendation that we put this on a bond article, am I correct?
It says bond.
That's what Town Hall 1 recommended.
Right,
Yep.
and and this doesn't actually say that, this could go either way. But if we go that route, what's the size of the bond required to start the project?
We would need to fund the 2.3 up front. and they-
Authorize. Need to authorize, right?
Yes, it would have to be authorized at town meeting, 2/3 vote. And we didn't pick a funding source.
Yeah, that's okay, keep
Per se.
going. So then
And-
we'd know in a month or so if we're going to get the grant.
Correct.
And the grant comes in as an offset to the bond, I would assume?
Is it a reimbursement or is it
It's a reimbursement, so once the project is completed, the federal government reimburses.
So, right, I can imagine one way that it could go is, you get a ban for the 2.3 to do
Right.
the construction and get it done. And then when the reimbursement comes in, the
Make the
remaining
bond be the
funds,
delta.
you'd either have to pay it out of free cash or actually bond 1.3.
So that raises, this gets, in
But I
my
should let
mind-
John talk because he's the bond guy.
Yeah, this gets a little bit tricky, and I really would like to understand it, because part of the motivation at Town Hall 1 was to try to hang on to all the free cash we could, and that's why this and the other huge project was put in, recommended for debt. But how that would work with this, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Roger nailed it. We would, sorry. Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. I think that's exactly how we would do it. We would get the cash flow for the project because it would need to be designed, would have some time there.
With bands.
With a ban, and depending on, as the reimbursements came in, lessen the amount of the ban, and then potentially use free cash to pay off the ban at some point, or eventually borrow that.
So-
But we would have a couple of years to figure that out.
So the question I have is, would we have to re-vote it in order to use free cash?
If we wanted to use free cash, we would.
And that would be about a year? What is the time frame of construction?
We would be, we have to have the design done December, and then they release the funds in beginning of 2025.
So it would be built, when would it actually be built?
Built in the summer of 2025, summer of 2025, by the time we do bidding and,
So about a year and a half from now it would be complete. That's what you're thinking, right? Okay.
That would actually work out perfect for the borrowing too, because we would be
Yeah.
at renewal time, and we could decide how much of the reimbursement we've gotten, and then what do we want to do?
So, John, if I may, Mr. Chairman, in this whole borrowing process, when we go out for, even with the ban, you still have to go out for the bond at some point where you've got to put together the package, you spend your $20,000 and you get your bids. When would that process start, where we would be encumbering money to put this on the bond?
So if we were going to design it in '25, we would have to borrow something if we were going to start the project in '25, in any way spend any money, we'd have to borrow in '25, which would mean it would have some sort of payment in '26, likely an interest payment on a ban that would go in our debt service budget,
But
a small amount.
If we do the band, does that commit us, does that include all the costs of actually getting it bonded?
No.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. So the only wrinkle in this is that it would need the 2/3 vote just to get off the ground at town meeting, even though we might end up with a grant and actually using free cash again.
Actually, I'm just curious about that mechanism. If we vote borrowing as funding source, can we use free cash?
Have to revote it.
It would have to be revoted to change that funding
I
source?
think
Okay.
that's what the gentleman said.
Okay, just wanted to double check that. So unless we voted as an either or thing,
I don't know if you can do that.
I think you can.
No, you can't do either.
you're not allowed to do an either or?
I think you need
I
it.
think leaving it indefinite doesn't
Okay.
help anybody.
So,
Yep,
if
fair
I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I think this actually, compared to some of the other big projects where we're, in my head, we're borrowing or we're using free cash, this works out really well, because it gives you the option, when the time comes, to use the free cash or not. It really does. And you could just retire the entire balance of the bond for this. So you get the $1 million grant, you pay, but you have to pay with the band, and then you pay off the remainder of the project with free cash, and it's gone. So our balance could only be, it could be as low as, $1.3 million of free cash out of the FY25 monies. So I guess I would go that route. I really would like to see this pass. I always get nervous with a 2/3 vote. It's something that a lot of people would picture as very discretionary. I just want to make a selling point on your behalf. Overlook is a dramatically underutilized site. It is absolutely spectacular. It's more than big enough for the sorts of things they're talking about. And I actually think it's good that we don't try to jam a Little League field or a soccer field in there, because it's great for what it is. It's just beautiful, walking, sitting, bike riding, whatever. And it's the perfect location for that neighborhood, and I think it would really be good to get this done. Oh, one other thing, if I may. Are we going to get rid of the storage that's up there?
No, the two buildings that are there will stay. Right now, the building that houses the theater, we will have space in there for program space for outdoor recreation purposes, and the other long rectangle storage garage, that is our only storage for our program division.
Yeah.
And they're cramped. They will expand, and we still store, as I mentioned, off-season small equipment in there.
Will we be able to maintain both where the players is in that old building and the garages? They're not exactly beautiful. Can we maintain them and spruce them up so that it's fitting with the site?
I think so. Would be some new windows and things like that on the building, but maybe a fresh paint job. They both have newer roofs. Roofs are under 10 years old on them. And I think some of the not nice features of the building that has the players in it is that people can pull behind it and do whatever they do.
Get rid of that.
Exactly, so.
Yeah, okay. You got the picture, so
Yes.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
So I'm all for expanding our parks. I think I have a couple of questions and concerns. Is one, most importantly, is how does this play into the outdoor facility master plan that we have yet to hear about? I kind of feel we're getting a cart before the horse on that one.
So this conceptual plan was part of the outdoor facility master plan and was at the beginning of that project, so that, because we knew we were going to be applying for the grant and we had a deadline to get a conceptual plan in. So it's part of it, and probably a large part of it, because it's, as Frank said, an unused or underutilized property.
It's really unique.
For its purposes.
Sure. Did we consider taking down more buildings? That's part of it. Is I do have concerns if we're going to spend all of this money and we want it to be a jewel, but then it just becomes kind of shiny. And I understand that we have a space that's being utilized by the players, and so I'm not trying to advocate for kicking them out. That's all I'm saying. But I feel that sometimes when we've been going into these building projects, we're short-sighted when we need to think access to everything. What is the grand scheme? And I'm sure there was some, why keep it, why not, just not privy to that. So just would love to know more of the whys, and it was helpful to hear, the summer program, the storage is there, but it seems like there is gonna be some buildings that might be removed that are up there, looking at the design from the back corner.
So there's 2 buildings that have already been removed, our old maintenance garages,
that's
2 of
right.
them. So the building that the players use will stay because they're a tenant in there. And in the future, we're always looking for more program space, and that could, if they choose to go somewhere else or disband, whatever, I think it's an opportunity to provide more program space for us. We have 2 rooms in our current building and a gym, and we're bursting at the seams. So having another area would be great. And then the long storage area, it's not just summer storage, it's storage for the program division. As I mentioned, we have 2 rooms and a gym. We don't have lots of, a lot of closets and other storage areas, so we're doing weekly trips to get equipment out of there and supplies, so that will stay as well. But we did remove 2 other buildings, were removed as part of the relocation of the maintenance facility.
My just last concern is, the first thing the taxpayers that we're gonna face in town meeting is the amount of money that we're looking at with these projects. And so there's gonna need to be a real big sell on this, and I think my hesitation is wanting to see the priorities of the other fields and other, I've been looking forward to this report. I was very invested in the last one, very interested in this one is about to come out, because I know how expensive that last report was just for the schools, and I can only imagine what this one's gonna say coming forward. And so I'm not saying that this isn't a priority, because I definitely trust the judgments of a lot of people that have done this, but when we're looking at all of these, I just wonder, are we trying to rush this too fast when we have so many priorities that we need to spend with?
You had something, Roger?
I'm sorry. To answer your question. So as a commission, especially with the grant money, that's why we're really pushing for it now. And this park is going to be generational. So this is phase 1 of who knows what this is going to be the beginning of, was a maintenance facility before. We had the maintenance buildings there. Once we get through phase 1 and then we come into a more down the line, we're not saying this is just the beginning of making Overlook Park be something that will be beautiful for the residents of Burlington for hundreds of years to come. This piece of property, I assume all of you have seen it. I mean, overlooks Boston. For people to go up there for recreational purposes, if we do this right, will be a jewel for this town, a hidden jewel that no one really knows about. I mean, you talk to people, Overlook Park, because it used to be our maintenance storage place. So I get it, we have a lot of big projects in Burlington on the burner, but to get this project up and going now, as a commission, we're very strongly wanted to get it underway as soon as possible, especially with the grant money that can be matched from the state and the federal government. That's a key factor. That's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Roger.
One of the things that Brendan mentioned when we met with him was that the property is currently under the control of selectmen, not the Recreation Department. And reading the actual article, warrant article, it does indicate that the property will be moved from the selectmen to under the control of the Recreation Department. I think you mentioned that required a 2/3 vote. I don't know that for certain.
The whole article, which that's included in the article, it requires a 2/3 vote. We went before the select board on Monday night, and they approved the article 5-0.
Okay, so I think to the bonding issue, the article already requires a 2/3 vote because it's conveying the property to the recreation.
2/3 of the selectmen or of town meeting
Town meeting.
Transfer of property.
to convey it?
Yeah.
So I think from the voting perspective, it won't change whether it's a 50-50 vote or a 2/3 vote.
Mike?
Just a quick question. I'm not sure I caught it. When do we expect to hear on the grant?
They said that this week at some point, possibly, but we have some other grants applications out there with the state, and they're not meeting, they're not coming in at the time frame they said. So we have I'm just going to plug it, sorry, a stakeholders meeting or event on Tuesday for this. So if you are able to come, it's the last piece in the outdoor facility master plan. They'll then gather all the feedback that they've already gotten online, and then the stakeholder meetings on Tuesday, and we'll compile that. And we're looking, our timeline changed a little. We were hoping to have it end of May, beginning of June. It's probably going to be July, just because other things got pushed back during the process. So if you have time, Tuesday night, Grandview Farm, 6 o'clock.
Do you feel at all confident that we'll know before town meeting in May?
About the grant.
Yes,
Hopefully.
trying to be cautiously optimistic, yes.
Okay. Yeah, Sonia?
I think I'll just add, Mr. Chairman, we had this discussion at the subcommittee meeting. Brendan relayed the commission's desire to do it now. I think we won't kind of just regurgitate the whole concept of it. It is a very good project. What really kind of puts the cherry on top is the fact that there could be this grant that could allocate, up to $1 million. Hopefully we'll hear before town meeting, because I think then that turns into a much easier discussion. But truthfully, when I look at Burlington just kind of on an aerial shot, you can clearly see that that's the spot that needs the attention right now. Overlook has really transformed itself and will transform even more, because now the maintenance division has been taken down, or now it's just storage. We talked about the players a lot. The players are really also a hidden gem, and while they're tenants in a building, it's still a great attribute to Burlington. And I think if you start to build things around it, you're going to bring some, you're going to kind of activate that area to know that there's actually things happening, both on a conservation level by taking the trails, a playground that will be done, parking, and then in addition to that, a theater that the community can see. Because I think sometimes people hear about the players but don't know really where they are, right? So it's a win-win all around. And while the master plan's final isn't complete, I think we could all agree that if you were to kind of say, where's the area of town that a park needs attention, it's clear that it's there, that the other parks have plans or have been improved. It's Overlook's turn, for lack of a better term. So I'm hoping that town meeting sees fit to move this project forward, and hopefully we'll only have to absorb half the cost.
I'll throw a few questions in, since I'll admit I have a few concerns about this. So I just want to make sure I understand the funding part. I think that's clear.
I think so.
You're asking for 2.3, but if we get the grant, that's a reimbursement of 1 million. So our net cost will be 1.3 million. It's not in addition to what we're spending, is the intention. Okay. So I'm just looking at DPW back there, and we kind of gave them a hard time for not really having much of a diagram on the dog pound. And I'm looking at this, and
Move the dog pound up there?
well, there's an idea. But no, the concern I have is I'm not really sure, where's this $2.3 million even come from? I mean, you sort of listed a number of things, but I have no idea how these various things add up to $2.3 million. They might, but I've seen no backup explaining how you came up with that number. So I'm kind of uneasy about that, given that it's such a large amount.
So I can forward the budget sheet. It's broken down.
Yeah, personally, I would like to see that, because I'm unclear what you're planning to build. I understand there's some trails and a driveway and so on, but, is there a new building involved with this?
No new building.
No new building, okay. So I'm, personally, I'm not sure how it adds up to 2.3. I'm confident that you have something that adds up to that, but I'd like to see that.
I don't have it, no, I don't have it with me, I'm sorry. But I can get it forwarded to everybody tomorrow.
Okay, and I guess and I'll admit I'm a little troubled by the dichotomy of we want to create a jewel, but we don't want anyone to go there. I mean, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I'll just leave it at that. And I guess as part of this, since we are talking about what sounds like could be really a $5 million project overall, I think as part of understanding the cost is, to understand what's envisioned for phase 2, to make sure that we're building towards something that, we're all buying into. I think, as Sonia says, conceptually, I like the idea of, it would be nice to visit a park instead of a missile site. That's a nice change. But, I'd really like to understand that vision better. And I'll admit I don't know a lot about the players other than what I read. I'm curious, though, that on the one hand, it seems like rec has a shortage of space and buildings, but on the other hand, we're allocating a whole building for the players. Is that what the town thinks is the most important use of a building, that we're actually, sort of allocating a building to that? So that's sort of the implicit assumption with this, that we're giving up using that space for other things. But at any rate, to me, the most important thing is I wouldn't personally be able to vote for this without knowing how we came up with the budget and what the plan is for the phase 2 budget. Because, we are really holding people's feet to the fire more, I think, than we have in the past. And to have something without a well-defined budget in front of us is kind of inexcusable, I think. But, Frank.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think Roger's chomping at the bit, too. What we could do here, I agree with you, it would be good to see the breakdown of the monies for the phase 1. I'm sure there's a lot of site work. If you could provide that, I think that would help a lot. And so I'm going somewhere with this.
I know you are.
We're meeting again on May 1st anyway, right?
We are.
Okay. So if you could get that quickly, that it might make some sense. It would be nice to get the whole committee on board. As far as the conflict of, we want a lot of people to use it, but we don't want a lot of people to come to it. When you put a recreation facility together that has, let me give you a real example. Wildwood is a combo place. There's youth soccer, there's a couple of infields, there's a big walking area, there's a playground. When it's used, and there is no conservation land near it really, when it's used not for sports, the limited parking that's there is just more than adequate. As soon as you have, a game with, 20 kids and 40 parents and whatnot, then the parking really starts to pile up. I think the lower space that's at Overlook is more than adequate when it's a non-sports event place. That's the first point I'd make. So I'm not bothered by the amount of parking that could be there. Actually, it's there now, it's just not in great shape. Right. And what does it park today? It must be able to get.
Less than 39 total spaces.
Yeah, so I was gonna say easily 20 cars fit in there.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
20, 25.
Right, so, for the casual biker, walker, picnic, and it's not designed to be used at night, I'm assuming,
Correct.
except the players might use it at night.
They would use it.
Right, and that's not gonna draw hundreds of people. So I think the parking is fine. I think its purpose is ideal. It's not an athletic facility. It's a conservation, recreation, walking. There's no other site like it anywhere in Burlington. The view is incredible. And if you really cleaned it up and got the conservation land accessible, it would get used that way, and it's used more casually, more intermittently. I would recommend you bring back as much information as you can, and we do the final vote on the 1st. Would you be agreeable to that?
That would make sense to me. I don't want
So let me make a
to force that on
motion.
people.
Table to a time certain, May 1st, with further information on the breakdown of the expenses for phase 1.
I'd second that. I
Okay,
have some more comments too, but
okay, yeah, I think we had a little more discussion.
Yes,
Mike?
What you had mentioned, do we want to understand where we're going in the later phase?
Yeah, I would suggest that you want to bring the entire $5 million plan, is where we're looking to get to,
hang on there.
if you have that.
But that's a future phase that may or may not happen, and I think that could confuse
Yeah.
Well, I think,
people, so-
personally, I'd like to understand where you're trying to, or envisioning it getting to. And it's fine to say, here's this phase, and here's what we imagine the second phase could be. Roger. I'll get to all of you.
We're going to beat up.
If we're going to come back to the first, maybe we should just resume then, but I just wanted to say a couple of things. So I think phase one is fine. I think you could stop there. The property would be eminently useful. Any phase two is going to compete with the rest of the facilities plan and the school's facility plan. So I think it's kind of irrelevant what it might be because I think because of this longer term funding problem that we have, we need to take a longer term look at the rest of it. This piece is particularly attractive at the moment, mostly because of the grant. And there's no, it sounds wrong, but it's unlikely the grant will be there next year. So if we put it off, we probably lose the whole thing.
Right, but we are voting on this
We're
without the
voting-
grant.
we're-
So
We're
if we vote yes to this, it's not dependent on the grant as written.
correct.
So.
And that's the way it has to be, the authorization has to be to fund the project.
Right, so we should be prepared that we're paying 100% of it.
Yes, and I think we are.
Yeah, okay.
Is there anything else? No, that's it.
Okay, Sonia?
I would just add that, the grant brings it forward, but truthfully, I think it's well worth its 2.3. So that part I don't mind. I absolutely have no issue with thinking that, you'd like to see the numbers. Shame on us, maybe we should have
Yeah, we
asked for
should
the
have
numbers
asked.
to be in front of you, so forgive us for that, but clearly I think that's fine. As far as seeing a phase two, Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to reconsider that only because I think it muddies the water. I think it shows a project that the commission hasn't even said this is what we're moving forward with, and phase one can stand alone. So I think that the dilemma of creating a phase that's conceptual at its best with no numbers and an estimate of it would probably get to 5 really now confuses what I think the community has already said, which is they want Overlook to remain in its state. And now the Recreation Commission is saying now we're going to improve on not building up there, not doing anything, but actually using it for what it was delivered to the town's intent. So I would just ask that we really think cautiously about asking for a second phase, which the commission hasn't really vetted out to be presented to town meeting or even this committee. I think phase one is not contingent on phase two being built. It can stand alone and actually work fine. And if phase two never happened, Overlook Park will be better served by having that first phase passed.
It would
So-
strictly be to understand the context and to make sure phase one doesn't interfere with phase two.
Well, all due respect, sir, I mean, I think if you're thinking about it that way, if phase one is what they're moving forward and phase two can't work with it, then there will be no phase two, But if you say, I'm not going to do phase one because phase two, I don't like phase two, which could very well happen when you start kind of talking about a project in its entirety. It's not like we're building, it's not like if you have a warrant before you for design and you say if you don't pass the design, the project's not coming. If you pass phase one, that neighborhood is going to have a park that's very viable, very usable, and opening up conservation space. So I just think if you ask a commission to come forward with phase two, when the commission themselves haven't really discussed it and vetted it and are prepared to present it to town meeting, we're putting them at a disadvantage on phase one.
I'll leave it up to you as to whether you think it makes sense or not.
Yeah.
That's
The
fine.
numbers, I agree, and again, I apologize for that. We should have asked for numbers to come here, but I think if we just hold it till the first, like Frank's moving, then at least the numbers will be before us. You can kind of see what phase one looks like, and I hope the town meeting will see it for the merit of the project before them, as opposed to what may come after it.
Ed?
Thanks. So I agree with these comments. I will say that the parking situation is very analogous to the Mill Pond Reservoir, where you can maybe on off hours get 6 cars at the water treatment station. maybe 2 to 4 cars at the end of Town Line Road, but it works because the use is occasional and asynchronous, not, you know, all at one time, which is what you're trying to say. And I would also restrict to just phase one, because phase one is well worth it. Little Brook Park in particular, that conservation area, is accessible to me and people I know who are very proficient at mountain biking or trail running, but it's not, and it's a great area that is not accessible to a lot of other people. There are 4 trailhead entrances. Currently, one of them is at Overlook Park, but if you open up Overlook Park and make it a destination, it becomes, you know, that whole conservation area is contiguous, becomes accessible to a lot of people, and in particular, people in that Windmere neighborhood who could walk or bike to it. And so I think it's well worth it. I think there's a park that anchors most neighborhoods in town, and that's one exception for those who have a hard time getting in. And I agree, I would like to see the enumeration of the costs, but I'll say, looking at what we're paying lately for site prep for ball fields, this looks like a bargain without the grant, and the grant really sweetens it. So that's where I'm going.
So I guess building on all of this, my concern about parking came more in when you start talking about an amphitheater or things that would draw a crowd. Because otherwise, having a casual kind of spread out use is very functional. And it'll fix itself. People won't go during the most popular times, but they'll go later or earlier because there's no parking. I might say that because it's so premature, I don't know about calling it phase one. It's a project.
Call it what it is. Overlook redevelopment.
You know, it's a project, and it's a really cool project, and when you start, then phase one is like, well, but what's phase 2 and 3, and why don't we know more? And it's just a cool standalone on its own project. So that's my
Chris?
Well, and that is a lot of my concern. Bringing this to town meeting in its current form is that there's going to be those things that will be picked out. I mean, 10% off the bat, we'll probably vote against it because that's just how town meeting starts. And so having this well done, I think will be where the success is going to be. I mean, for whatever reason, I'm stuck on the parking. Like 39 spots, there's already I was trying to look up on Facebook the pictures of the theater. I'm like, well, how many seats are there? How do they do that currently? Because I've unfortunately never, had the pleasure of going to one yet. And I was like, is that enough parking for that? And then I'm thinking about the amphitheater, and when that development in Town Square was coming up, one of the reasons that big sunk was there wasn't enough parking, besides the traffic and all the other things. But, those are the small things that town meeting does get hung up on. And then if we are putting in an amphitheater, and if that's what the town wants, great, let's do it. I don't want us to be short-sighted on something that then spills into the neighborhoods, and then the neighborhoods are now frustrated with something that was supposed to be a huge benefit. And there should, again, I'm not against this per se, I want this tightened up, and yes, I have financial concerns, but I do also like the idea of stopping the idea of this is phase 1 or phase 2, this is the phase, as we do with all projects. And if there is another one, great. We've gone back with other parks, we've gone back with other things, and this is the next thing. But I do think that could get carts before the horse as well with this, because if this is what we've decided should really happen now, and again, with the financials we have in front of us, and really having this secure as saying, hey, this is our priority because it pulls into here. We have this grant, we have this, and we want to do it. That's going to be the much better sell on this to bring this piece of property up.
Can we go
All
on?
right, we do have a motion to table here, so let's take a vote on tabling this until May 1st. Those in favor of tabling? Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 10-0-0. Does coming back May 1st work for you, Brendan?
All right.
It's going to have to,
All right, I appreciate your dealing with us here.
just being honest.
I completely understand how annoying it is. Yeah.
I'll make it work.
All right. We,
28?
Yeah, well, I'm just pausing. Well, maybe some of you could work out if May 8th would somehow be better. That
No, it would not.
is an option.
No,
Okay.
the 8th is not.
I will be out of the country on May 8th.
Okay.
I could do it virtually.
And Sonia won't be here.
All right. May 1st then. All right, very good. All right. So next is Article 28, the Recreation Athletic Field Improvement. Roger?
All right, so the Recreation Department is requesting $200,000 to improve the state of the fields and the other recreation facilities, with the explanation that the amount of money that has been in the operating budget for years has been insufficient to keep up with the maintenance and the various systems, for example, sprinkler systems around all of the fields. And by putting this in as a request for free cash at the as a warrant article, it will allow the field qualities to be improved and fix some remedial problems and give some time to evaluate how it works before suggesting that, in fact, the operating budget should be increased to cover this on a long-term basis. I think Brendan can probably enumerate a bit more about things that need work that aren't getting worked in the current budget. Subcommittee did vote to support this 2-0.
Brendan?
Sure, thank you. So just as Roger mentioned, it is for field improvements. We hear over and over through our public outreach and our needs assessment in the town's open space and recreation plan, anytime people, even when there's not just a open public comment for it or a study being done, we hear about the athletic fields. And we have taken steps to address the grass playing surfaces that are irrigated and try to do as much as we can with the limited budget we have. To really do this right, we'd have to increase our budget by 6 figures to put all of our athletic fields in there. We are coming up against irrigation systems that are over 20 years old, fields that we don't have in our athletic field maintenance program due to no irrigation, so we don't expend funds on them. So we look at installing some irrigation systems on some fields to make them more playable and usable throughout the season. Fencing, player benches, backstops, just site amenities at athletic fields in general are falling into disrepair, and we put Band-Aids on them, but they're, fencing 25, 30 years old, rusting, falling, need to be redone. So we looked at this as a way to make improvements and take projects, if we can lump together irrigation, we get a better price if we're putting irrigation into a couple fields. We realize some of our larger fields that have irrigation on them need to be replaced. We Band-Aid them. They're older systems. There's much more efficient systems out there now. And then looking at making our athletic fields more accessible. Getting actually to the athletic fields is an issue in a lot of places. So we look at this as a way to improve our athletic fields faster than we could in a budget, increasing it by 3% each year. There's other needs within the department beyond athletic fields. If we just focused on the athletic fields in our budget, we wouldn't be able to continue to operate and provide programs and events efficiently. So that's what we're asking for. We realize, investments in athletic fields can seem expensive. The long-term benefits, though, outweigh the costs. And funding athletic field improvements is not merely an expenditure, but an investment in both happiness and safety of our residents. So by providing accessible, well-maintained recreational spaces, we can really reap a multitude of benefits that enrich the lives of individuals and strengthen the social fabric in the community. So we think it's important that the Recreation Commission feels it's important, as it supported it, and the other night the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, sorry, also supported this, moving forward with this.
Okay. Do we have discussion on this? Frank?
I just want to clarify, I think, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is this puts in place a mechanism where periodically, maybe annually, there's a chunk of money where you have a lineup of things that you want to get to stay ahead of or catch up with, things that are broken, need to be improved, need to be repaired, et cetera, and that this is sort of an ongoing plan, a little bit like putting so much money into your IT infrastructure every year. Is that your thinking?
So yes, sorry, I didn't mention it, similar to the stream cleaning program, sidewalks, streets, those type of things.
So we'd see this as a periodic warrant article, maybe annually. We'll see how far they get with the first tranche. It makes sense to me because I think periodic programs allow for better planning, allow to fix things while they're in the condition that they're intended to be in and not broken or unusable. And if in fact, you can, and the way this would work is I would assume that the money could carry over, and I'd like to check on that. I see that's the right motion back there.
Because it's a warrant article.
Yeah, so they don't have to close it out necessarily on the end of the fiscal year. So I think if you use it judiciously and we give it a reasonable seed amount of money and see how it goes, we'll have a periodic program in the rec department for maintaining everything related to recreation infrastructure. And that, I think, is a good thing to do. In fact, I think by not having that, we've seen some of the downside of trying to keep up when we can't. So I would support it, even though it's quite a bit of money, but I have the funny feeling with the number of fields we've gotten where we're at, it's a good amount to start with, and I would support it this time around.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we're rebuilding our fields, our ball fields, are we putting in irrigation?
We haven't rebuilt a field.
We're
In a long
rebuilding
time.
Francis Wyman supposedly.
There's already irrigation there. That's one of those original systems that's 20-plus years old.
And Wildwood was built with irrigation.
Irrigation, yes.
It's 13 acres, I think, something like that.
Just making sure.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Anything else on that, Robert?
No thanks.
Okay. Chris?
So one of my original concerns when they had the school fields, and will be with this one, was we have a lot of high needs. And what I like about this article is this will do the low needs, the ones that need the small things to keep them from going to the medium and the high. And it was one of my concerns when doing the math and then going through it and saying, well, how do we not shift our focus and only focus on the emergencies, and then these other fields that just need a little bit here and there don't get into that. So I like the proactiveness of this and definitely want to support it. I think I just want to see a little bit more specifics on what in particular this either can be used for or the ideas. Because again, trying to sell these things at town meeting can either work well or they'll be tooth and nail. But I think just the idea of we want to keep some of these fields that are good and great from going to okay and not great. And this stabilization fund, and yes, it may be something we need to continue to do, much like we do with other things, to keep these at that level. And that is the investment that our town wants to continue to do, so we have these things to be proud of.
Just to be clear, this isn't a stabilization fund. Okay. Mike, you got something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering about this, so this $200,000, it sounds like it's for kind of materials and supplies, let's say roughly. Do you also have extra labor hours that you need to be able to utilize those?
No, there will be materials and supplies in there. There will be, we don't do fencing, so we would have to contract out for fencing work and things like that. We can do ball field, infields over, so some of our infields are not level, the grass is not great, there's no irrigation, so what we would do is rip out the infield, regrade everything, relay a new infield, have irrigation installed, and that will, that in itself, and then getting into the athletic field maintenance program, the fertilization and seeding, and so, will be back to where we should be. We're behind the 8 ball in that. Some fields were created in the 70s, right? And they were, hey, this looks like a nice piece of property, and they took a bulldozer out and graded it and we've just been working off of that base forever. But it's not level anymore. It doesn't shed water. So looking at those type of projects on the smaller fields, not the major ones, as Chris mentioned earlier.
So it's a combination of materials and supplies and contracted services as needed, and also labor from the Recreation Department where you guys can do things.
Right. We will take care of as much of the labor as possible.
How do you decide which fields you're going to focus on?
So right off the bat, we'd be looking at some of our smaller fields. So Rahanis Park, the softball field there, looking at installing irrigation there. There's already a water line that goes out to the dog park. When it went in, it was a 2-inch line. It's perfect for irrigation for that. That backstop, undersized. And some of the fencing needs to be changed there as well. It's falling down, it's rusted. It's the old, has the twisted top, so you have the points. Same thing, Veterans Park, the infield there needs to be redone. Probably the outfield regraded because it undulates, and the fencing there as well is falling down. And then the backstop there is okay. Backstop at Rotary Field is undersized for adult softball and high school softball. That would be a project we'd look at, as well as the softball field at Center School.
So my next question is, that's all baseball, softball. What about other sports? It sounds like everything you mentioned was baseball and softball.
So right now, our rectangular fields or areas that we use for, say, soccer, at Wildwood, it's irrigated. It's a beautiful pitch there, and the park is new, so I don't see us expending funds right away there. At Rahanis, Upper Rahanis as well, that could probably use some fencing eventually. That fencing is starting to fail in areas, but the field itself has undergone a transition, I think, in the last 3 years of really growing in thick and being a nice level stand. Memorial, the same thing. We brought that back last year. We had a great turnaround on that field. So some of those, they're already irrigated. They're in our plan now. The grass is improving there. Those fields, we would probably do top dressing. One thing we don't do a lot of is top dressing, so adding, the really fine grade sand, and what that does over, 2 or 3, 4 top dressings, it brings that field level more level, gets rid of the undulations, the ball roll is more consistent, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for high-quality recreation fields. We're not looking for collegiate fields. We're not looking for pro fields. We're looking for high-level recreation fields.
I'm just kind of curious, how are the fields at Francis Wyman, beyond the ball field, open spaces that were used for soccer, I don't know if they're used for other sports, but how are those?
They're good. They're not great. So on the school properties, we're not allowed to use an herbicide to get rid of the weeds. There's a lot of weeds into those properties. We have been doing an aggressive overseeding, and we do see results, but when we hit, it's irrigated. But when we were conserving water a couple years ago, the weeds go back in because that's what goes in when it's hot. So we use organics on the school properties still.
Okay.
So we could make strides. That's a school committee vote, I think, and I think it has to be 3/5, 4/5, I believe. So we weren't there to go outside to go non-organic.
To use weed.
To use an herbicide. So we use an herbicide on Wildwood. in 2017 in August, and then we top dressed it with sand. I would say by the end of September, beginning of October, it was a completely different field. So,
Good. Sounds like progress.
and now we only spot treat on Wildwood, Rohannes, Simons. They're all just spot treated.
I'll ask a couple questions. Hate to be annoying tonight. So I know it's come up at the school committee meetings a fair amount in the past, but I've never heard an answer. What is the incremental cost of saying the school fields has to be organic versus not, would you say?
I don't know if I could have put a figure to it. It's more of, a more immediate result you could get by, the products we use are 96% organic anyways. It's the small amounts of herbicide, it's liquid, it's dropped into a 100-gallon tank of water and diluted and sprayed onto the field. And like I said, we're spot treating now, so we're using even less. But we're using all organics there. There's no natural organic herbicide. Well, it's not selective. It'll take care of everything. There's not a selective one, which is what we use on the other fields to get rid of broadleaf, crabgrass, those type of things. So as far as the dollar, I don't.
Maybe it's more of a quality than a cost difference.
It would be a quality over a cost. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I get the sense from what you're listing that you can't imagine the list ever ending of things that you need to do, which is probably accurate. But from a selling it point of view, I guess I have the same question here is, what do we get for 200,000? So I'm curious if you could, if there's some kind of breakdown of how that is going to be spent so that we understand, okay, for 200,000, we get 5 backstops, 6 fields leveled, and an irrigation system, or whatever it is. That will be an easier sell than, don't worry, we have no shortage of things on our list to spend this on, which I'm sure is true, but it
What would help them, Mr. Chairman, there's one paragraph, and you could maybe put some numbers to it. It says, this article also allows to make renovations to existing fields, replace worn and damaged fencing, backstops, players' benches, improve accessibility, make upgrades to irrigation areas, but there's no numbers on it.
that's
And that
really,
would help a little bit.
yeah, so if,
The list is there, but
if you could enumerate, your top items and rough amounts they might go for, that'd be great. Yes, Sonia?
Can I add to that, Mr. Chairman? Because I think Roger and I had this conversation at the subcommittee meeting. So I think this article is, I'm gonna say this, but I hope you'll follow me on this. Almost like when people ask Tom Hayes about what streets are getting done under the Chapter
There's a
90
list.
money, right? Or, which sidewalks are being addressed with the money that we're presenting that now that town meeting has seen fit to fund like every other year, and that the money is coming, and then DPW can then decide what the needs are. So I think the description of this article is just that. We are committing to $200,000 a year if in fact this is successful, and town meeting sees it as successful as that discussion of, then the Recreation Commission and the department would decide as they see fit what the projects, they're giving you examples of what said projects would be, and I know Mike asked, so Brendan gave him like some very definitives of what they see themselves doing, but the concept of this article, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the concept of this article is to allocate funding so that they can then decide what projects are bringing themselves forward. So, or showing that they need the most attention in that particular fiscal year. So what Roger and I had said in the subcommittee meeting, if something like this is successful at town meeting, then the beautiful part of this is to do something similar to like what DPW does, which is have a running list of this is what's going on, and as the need becomes more apparent to the commission and the department, that's what's going to take the forefront. So, without necessarily promising an exact schedule of these are the 5 that are set for this year, It's, these are the projects that we know are either running projects, or these are the things that are coming, and as they come, whichever one needs the most attention is what's going to come forward. Did I explain that right, Brendan, or?
Yes, and obviously, when we do receive our outdoor facility master plan that Chris is excited for, as well as we are at the Rec Department, Parks and Recreation, you know, it's going to identify some of those, you know, that are more pressing than others. And the ones I named, I'm going to guess will probably be towards the top of those lists, because those are the ones that I look at and our staff looks at and says, you know, undersized, falling apart, we Band-Aided, you know, put Band-Aids on this for a long time, so.
Right, and I think that's my point, and you know, as it is now, it's a 9.5% increase to your operating budget is what it looks like. And I think that's what we don't want to do. I think if we want to think of it as similar to what DPW has done with the roads, you know, Tom Hayes has a list of all the streets, and we understand here's the order, and you know, this is how much it costs per foot. And I realize it's not quite as straightforward here, but I think that's the point, so that it doesn't look like just an operating budget increase. I think part of the sell is it needs to have that first $200,000 of the list, and with the idea that you'll expand it as time goes on with the zillions of things that you need to do. But without that list, it feels like an operating budget increase, and that's what I want to avoid.
The recommendation at Town Hall 1 was to keep this as a free cash warrant item, and it goes up and down on the need and on the availability of the free cash. So I think that helps a little bit with having runaway operating budgets. And if the money can roll over, that also helps. So we'll see, but you're right, you need to figure out, you need to manage the money.
Right, I think the point is, with all the warrant articles, we need to understand how the estimate was come up with, other than we know it's more than this. And so that would be my hesitation on where we are right now. And
I agree with you.
First.
It's not bad.
But no, I just want to draw a distinction. I think I'm comfortable that we've got projects that we need to address with this mechanism, but I don't know how uncomfortable we are with that 9.5% increase in the operating budget. I think that we have this mechanism that's somewhere in between capital projects and operating budget that we're pretty dedicated to. And so where I do take exception is you put it again on the recreation department. I think this is a ways and means thing. We've accepted and fostered this third way where we have a continuing bucket of miscellaneous projects that go into the operating budget, and I think we need to get comfortable with that.
But I wouldn't put in the operating budget.
Well, I wouldn't either. I've come around to seeing why we have this middle layer, but I think it has to be explicit. I think we have to say that it is a need, which is very analogous to dredging the streams and doing occasional maintenance that the DPW does, that we have these needs, these smaller needs that have to go in a bucket and be collected. And it does have to go with a punch list, with a priority list. There has to be some formalism. So I think those two things go together.
You got something, Rod?
Yeah, maybe it's not much different, but I think one of the terms that I've heard the administration uses is pay-as-you-go, right? There's a little bit of flexibility. It's not, you're not locked into the operating budget. It's discretionary every year. It's needs-driven, and you have to make the case for it. So I think it certainly behooves the Recreation Department to come up with a list of things, however deep it is, and be able to work from that.
If I may, I think that optionality, our ability to punch out if we need to for other budgetary concerns is part of that. It's part of the sell and it's part of the value. But I do think we have to be explicit about it. I don't think that we can say, well, we're uncomfortable with this because this is, we're part of this. It's part of the funding mechanism that we've all collaborated in.
I'm totally comfortable with the funding mechanism. It's the explicit enumeration aspect that I feel is missing.
Yeah, no,
That's the only thing
I
I
agree.
would
That's
look
the
for.
missing piece
Yep.
that makes this very functional.
One more thing is, I'm willing to take a chance on year one. Year two, when this comes back, there's gonna have to be a track record. Here's what we spent the money on, and we're gonna be more specific next year.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just ask the general question, do people feel comfortable voting on it tonight, or would they like to have the extra detail before they vote on it?
I'd make a motion to approve.
I would second that.
Okay, discussion? Chris, you had something?
I was just gonna, for discussion purposes, I'd say that the openness of this allows for a different vote than the detailed part of it. So some people may want the openness that can happen here. Some people are gonna want the detail, and either way could sink or support it. You know, we have not funded our fields the way we should have, point blank. You know, you can call it a 9% increase in the operating budget, but we should have been doing this years ago, and this is what these reports, that's why I'm so excited about, what are showing us, is that we've been doing these other items that have not gotten to the point that we should have been keeping these up. And when you go and play sports in other towns, it's pretty evident the distinction between our fields. I mean, that it's very evident of where we want them to be and where they are in other towns. And then, yes, $200,000 is an absolute a lot of money, and it contradicts a little bit of some of the things I've also said, but I also don't want us to be at we have to spend $100 million on our parks in Burlington on top of 2 schools, a police department, and all these other things, which is what we may be looking at. So I think it's a small amount of money to keep some of these from going to the other way as well.
Right?
Not to beat a dead horse into glue. Can you provide a somewhat definitive list of what you think you are likely to tackle with this first tranche?
Yes,
That's the right answer. Since you're coming back on May 1st, rather than put us in a funny spot, just give us that list. And what I would say is, a year from now, the very first thing we should be expecting and looking at is, what did you do in the past year and what did it cost? Where are you going in the next year? And how much should we be appropriating in the warrant article? And that gives you the cadence year on year. For the starting point, it's a little bit amorphous, and that's what has the chair uncomfortable and maybe some other members. If you could just give us a working list as part of the backup, I think it would help. I think it puts us in a smarter position. And so that's what I would ask for. So we've got a motion on the table to approve now, right?
Yep. Which we'll vote on unless there's more discussion. Rob?
It would be really nice if you came back to us, if we were going to postpone it, come back with a list of $500,000, which is probably what we really need in all the list. But to start with $200,000, I think is perfectly fine.
Well, do we
Without a
want to withdraw
list.
the motion to approve and have a motion to table, time certain?
That's up to whoever made the motion.
Okay. On the debate as to whether to table the motion, I think that we've got a plan that just includes a punch list. I hate to move more things forward, but I would rather vote on this forced than half-heartedly or not unanimously,
get everyone on board.
pass this one. So I think I heard verbally exactly the list that we need and that town meeting would benefit for. So I agree. We should just put that on paper as part of the backup and take a vote later.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's my advisement to whoever made the motion.
I made the motion. I'd be comfortable taking a vote.
Okay, so,
Sonia,
oh,
I mean, it's easy enough to postpone it, but I'd just as soon get it done with, unless there's any serious blocks.
Mike?
Question on that then, if we take a vote and it doesn't pass, then what happens?
We can reconsider if we decide. I believe anyone who voted no can bring it up for reconsideration. So if for some reason it didn't pass, we could reconsider. If it did pass, then it passes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be honest with you. I think if I'm going to be totally honest
Well, you
with
should
this,
always be.
I think that moving this question now just makes sense to me because, again, I'm voting on a theory of the money and what we're doing with it. I think if Brendan wants to supply a list to us, and anybody who is uncomfortable for it wants to reconsider, fine, but truthfully, this warrant isn't based on his list. This warrant is based on what they are going to do with it. A warrant article is actually very clear that it's used for a specific purpose, and if it's not used for that, it's either returned to the general fund or it's carried over. In this instance, I believe it's carried over, correct, Paul? And I think that for us to be talking about the specific projects is a little bit difficult for me, only because we're all acknowledging that for sure, there's probably more than $200,000 worth of field work that needs to be done, or maintenance to the Recreation Department. I struggle to say, give me a list, because now we're just opening Pandora's box of, is that list, in fact, what is gonna happen? And if it doesn't happen for some reason, are they coming back behind the 8 ball by saying, well, we didn't do this one, and everybody says, that's what you said you were gonna do last year? So my feeling is, if Brendan wants to supply a list to this committee as a point of information and supply something to town meeting to say, here's what the recreation sees as maintenance type things that are going to be done. I see it as a vague discussion, because really at the end of the day, when a warrant article is passed, it's at the discretion of the commission that it's under. So we are asking him to give us a list that he knows our needs, but he doesn't really know the order of. I just feel like he's doing it, I don't want to say to pacify us, Brendan, but I would love to see, yes, could you have it for town meeting to say, hey, here are some of the things that will happen, but to give us a list without dollar amounts, now you stand there and say, well, do you really need a new bench? I don't know if you should spend that there. Why don't we have that in the funding mechanism of the budgets? We start having that discussion and it goes down Pandora's box. It just opens wide with that, as opposed to saying, what the commission would like to do, what the administration has discussed, is we are going to start to allocate $200,000 a year for field maintenance and other maintenance. And if, in fact, you don't do a good job with that, then next year we're going to call you to the plate on it. Or if, in fact, we don't have the funding mechanism to do that next year, then next year we're going to vote it down. But to me, to bring back a list is not going to change my mind, because it's going to be a fluid list. He's not showing me something in concrete. He's showing you what he proposes may happen. But this warrant article, irrelevant of what list he gives me, gives the commission the authority to spend $200,000 at their discretion for field maintenance and repair. I didn't read the whole thing because my glasses aren't on. But that's what, you know, no matter what list he shows us, town meeting is going to vote that they are trusting the Recreation Commission and their department to do field maintenance and or other maintenance at the discretion of the Recreation Commission up to $200,000. That's what we're voting. That's what the warrant's written on. I'd move the question now.
You can't move the question.
I've already seconded it. No, I didn't say I'm moving the question. I'd say I leave the question moving now.
I
don't-
understand.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this before we vote? All right, so just to be clear, we're voting on warrant article 28, recreation and field improvement for $200,000. Those in favor, please raise your hand. And opposed? And a close vote, 9-0. All right. Thank you very much for your patience, Brendan and David. No
problem.
I know it's been a long night.
We're so easy to get along.
Okay?
Very good. All right.
I'll see you next week.
And I appreciate your patience on that, too. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the DPW warrant articles.
Question?
Yes.
Sometimes I lose sight, or we all may lose sight of the bigger picture. What's the total of requested warrant articles?
5 point something. We have that list.
Do you recall the total offhand, Frank?
It's in my minutes from last week.
in the
my
free
Saturday
cash
day,
deal.
Yeah, actually, it's on the
I think
website.
it's 5.5, something like that.
That rings a bell, yeah.
How does that compare to previous years?
It's a pretty hefty list.
It's up a little bit, I think,
Yeah.
from previous
Yeah.
years, but not a lot.
Yeah,
We usually spend like 5.
5, yeah.
We used to spend 5, yeah, 2.5 and 2.5, so,
Well, that's
Yeah.
the total list.
It's the ballpark,
That's
yeah.
schools, everything.
yeah.
Right.
And we're, how much now, 5.5?
3.
This list, I believe, Article 7 totaled roughly 5.5 million. And John can probably dig it out exactly if we pay him.
5,376.
Yeah,
And last year it was,
5, round number.
Yeah.
how do we decide how much we're going to?
Because we
spend
never
on
get it all
warrants?
done.
Huh?
We never get it all done. There's always something spilling off.
I mean, is there a, just a a guideline on warrants?
Yeah, we did a free cash analysis with the administration, and we took Article 7, and those all seemed to have sufficient priority, totaled it up, came in at this much free cash if you did it all, 5-ish. And then we went from there with all the other requests for free cash and came up with an allocation. But you need to vote on each one of these on its merit, regardless of that. If you don't, these may not all pass. And if your question is, are there ones we didn't do, the proponents just elected to bring forward what they brought forward as higher priority.
My question was more like a structure for our town budget and expenses, such that we know, like, roughly, we know what our, the budget guidelines are, and historically what that's been. And my question was along the warrants, generally we stick to, it used to be sort of be this amount, and it sounds like we're kind of sticking to that amount roughly, but it's grown a little bit.
Well, you have to ask yourself, how much free cash do we expect?
I'm going to suggest we have this conversation afterwards so we can not keep DPW here all night. We sort of had this discussion a little bit last meeting, but perfectly fine to bring it up, but let's get through DPW first. So our first article is, we have Brian White and Tom Hayes, who have both been waiting patiently, and Rachel Leonardo. Ixnay on that. Less patiently. All right. We have...
He's our budget director.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Congratulations on that, by the way. So at any rate, our first article is 7-4, the Wynn Street Mountain Road traffic light. Roger.
Right, this is $400,000 to construct and install a traffic light at Wynn Street and Mountain Road. In the design of this system, of a street light, and the previous evaluation was approved by town meeting in 2023. So a previous study had been done to determine whether there actually was a need for a traffic light at that intersection. Proposal was made, town meeting voted for the design, and now this $400,000 is to actually construct the light, update that intersection to the standards. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support it, and maybe Brian and Tom have more detail to add if you're interested.
Would you guys like to add to that?
So this has been a long time coming. The study that was done, the traffic study was done in 2011. So we put it on in our capital plan in FY14 for FY18. Since then, it's marched forward. So this has been, well over a decade in the making. So finally, Paul Sagarino suggested in FY24 to split it. He goes, tried it, $100,000 for design, which was approved last year, and now $400,000 for construction, which we hope to go forward with. We hope to get the money in July and then go forward, probably maybe even bid it this year and construct it over the course of the next couple.
Discussion? Chris?
I'll take one. I travel through this twice a day, so I'm very much in favor of the light. I think my only general question is, if there's a large funeral there, was there any consideration on how that would impact the traffic if there was a large funeral at the funeral home, and then the congestion that could then happen, because I've been stuck in that many a time.
I mean, I'll address,
So, you know, I don't know how much, it's hard to say how much it'll impact it, but typically, the standard for all the cabinets that we do install, we allow a police access door. So similar to what you see at the mall, they're able to manually control it. So if there's a big funeral, you know, perhaps the detail there's a detail that may be able to operate, or maybe there's a second detail that at the light and then at the intersection. But it's typically similar to the mall. We've used the handheld clickers to address that issue.
You don't mind one more? And then there's a lot of small businesses around there. Have they been favorable for this type of, I'm sure the neighbors are, but have the businesses been favorable for this type of a light going in?
we did a mailing, and as far as we know, there was no objection, so we're assuming that everyone's on board with it. We'll have, we're still in the design process, so we are actually meeting tomorrow to go over the preliminary, and then we'll probably have a neighborhood meeting with everybody there, you know, one stop, and all the neighbors there, to ensure that everybody's happy with what we're proposing.
Okay. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will it be a smart light that stays green for the flow that's major, which would be wind? Yeah, so that's going to throttle the Mountain Road to wind. Thank you.
Anything additional?
Move to approve?
Second.
Okay. This is for Article 7-4, Wind Street Mountain Road traffic light for $400,000. Raise your hand if you agree. Opposed? Abstain? 10-0-0. All right, this Article 7-5, the Terrace Hall Station VFD replacement.
Right.
Roger?
So Terrace Hall, as I recall, has 4 sewage pumps. This is I believe this is the last of the 4 to be replaced for $40,000. It's because the Terrace Hall is positioned in the sewage disposal system is one of the larger and more critical pumps, and the subcommittee voted to support it 2-0.
Additional on that?
The other thing I'd like to add, so the oldest one now will probably be going on, 4 or 5 years old now, as we've done one each year. So, if we keep it so that it's broken up like that, probably expect to see this again not too long from now.
How many total VFDs are there throughout the system?
4. Well, there's 4 at Terrace Hall. Terrace Hall, because of the size, because it handles 2/3 of the town's sewage generated, they're the most costly. A lot of the other ones, I believe, are around $5,000 to $10,000, depending on the size of the station we can handle in operating. This one, there's 1 VFD for each pump, 4 pumps.
So the other ones are on a longer rotation is the idea?
Yeah, the other ones have similar useful lives, but we're able to typically address those in the operating budget because it's a lesser amount than the 40,000.
Okay, they're
They're
small.
smaller pumps, so they don't require an expensive VFD.
Got it. And I'm just curious, the quote is, it looks like the quote is for 30,000, but you have 40,000 for the...
Yeah, so some of the electronics that are, percentage-wise, it's big, but some of the electronics that are not that much money tend to be a little more volatile. So last year, the quote, it was a slightly bigger VFD that we asked for last year, but that one came in at just over 40,000. So we expect this one to be a little less, but given last year's quote and the importance of the station, we just trying to make sure that we have enough contingency built in.
You don't want to replace half of one.
Not delay the replacement of it.
All right. Additional discussion on this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, this is for Article 7-5, Terrace Hall Station VFD replacement for $40,000. Raise your hand if you approve. Against? Abstain? 10-0-0. All right, next is Article 7-6, Water Meter Replacement Program Design. Roger.
All right, so this $50,000 is to engage an outside firm to do a study of the water meters and the water metering reporting system within Burlington and make a recommendation for how to upgrade the system. The current deployed water meters and the infrastructure that supports reporting of the water meters was done in 2010 when the town adopted an automated water reading program. A lot of the water meters and the infrastructure are sort of reaching their useful life, and this is a program we'll design a program to replace them over time. It's not going to replace any water meters, it's just for a design of an upgrade for the whole system. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to approve, and I'm sure Tom and Brian can provide more detail.
Do you have additional on that?
Just that I'm guessing that some of the questions are going to be how old the meters are. So about 70% of our meters, a typical residential meter is going to last for, it's either years or gallons that go through it. 12 years, 10 to 12 years is the useful life for residential. We have 70% of our meters are 10 years or older. We've taken it upon ourselves in the division, and if you the operating budget, we have a line item for meter replacement, so we've been trying to do what we can in-house to address the ones that are currently breaking and slowing down, but we're just not sized. We've probably done only about 15% of them over the last 3 years, I think, or so, and that's been an aggressive push. So there's no way we're built to do a full-town replacement in-house. Also, we're not, we'd like to see what the new technology is versus just replacing meters.
Okay, a discussion? Mike?
I got a little lost there. So this isn't going to go towards replacing meters, it's going towards...
This will bring on a design expert, to draft up a RFP for us to go out, review, newest technologies, come up with a game plan. So the next year, upon their advice of how we should break it up, whether it should be a 2-year phase project, so the next year, or a couple of years, you'll probably see $1 million maybe each year, depending on what their estimate is for construction.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
What's our unaccounted water percentage now? Where are we at?
So this year, I think it was around 7 or 8%. Last year, it was over 10%. But typically DEP looks at, historically prior to that, that was the first time we were over 10 for quite a while. And also our per capita use is very low compared to other communities. So because we're water conservation driven, and the previous issue, fortunately, they didn't say anything about the higher than usual.
I'm curious, where did the 50,000 come from?
We spoke with Weston Sampson, who did our initial evaluation way back, I don't know, it was 2010-ish. Give us an estimate. What do you think it's going to cost to come in and help us out with this? That was $50,000.
Okay, so they gave us that number for what they thought it would take.
Yeah, and it's not fixed. It's it all depends on level of effort. But $50,000 is a good estimate for to help us out and draft an RFP and give us some advice, because we're not up to speed on the new technologies. So it's not only technology, it's not only just meters, but it's meter reading system. Right now we have radios. Are we going to stay with the radios? Are we going to go with an all brand new system? Are we going with new software? So someone who is an expert in meters is going to give us a hand.
Okay.
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you. This is for Article 7-6, Water Meter Replacement Program Design for $50,000. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? Passes 10-0-0. Next is 7-7, Drainage Repair Stream Cleaning. Roger?
Yes, so this $200,000 is sort of is an annual request to support the cleaning of streams. There's still $100K from previous warrant articles to use, also apply to stream cleaning. The request includes a map of the areas to be cleaned in the next few years in terms of incremental work and, where sand in the streams have been most congested. Subcommittee voted support 2-0.
Anything additional?
This program's been going on for probably about 30 years. The map that we provide is actually pretty aggressive. The cost to stream clean streams is actually more than it costs to lay pipe. Right now, we're paying, or the last stream cleaning 2023, we were paying $375 per linear foot of stream. So it's super expensive. We have a couple streams that are targeted for this year, and we're hoping that the available funds of $300,000, the $100,000 from last year and $200,000 this year is adequate to take care of those couple streams.
This is an every year article typically, right?
Yes, we've been doing this for a long time.
Okay. Additional discussion? Mike?
Just the $375 per foot of stream. Is this cleaning with what do you call it, a vac?
A vector.
A vector.
So you have to block the stream to prevent the flow from coming through, and essentially they run hoses and they shovel a shovel at a time into a hose and it sucks it up. So it's very labor intensive. We're not allowed to put equipment into streams. You only can put in, it has to be like surgical.
So it's from sand and so forth getting into the stream. You
Yeah.
just got to get back out.
Yeah, and we haven't put sand on the roads in a very long time, but there is a lot of sediment just accumulates, dirt, gravel, just from, washouts and whatnot. Whatever bypasses the catch basins still is getting to the streams. And this, especially this last couple of years with all the rain, we've had a lot of complaints of flooding. We thought we were kind of winding down for a while because it's been so dry previous to this, but all of a sudden we had a lot of complaints. We do a lot of investigations, and then we need permission. We need confirmation from the Conservation Commission that it is meets the criteria before we can actually queue it up for our program.
Do you clean the whole length of stream, or is it more you clean the stream at the intersection of roadways where sand may have gotten in?
With typically the sand accumulates, it will accumulate, where it discharges into the stream, but then it will kind of migrate down. So what we do is we do a survey of the whole stream from end to end, and then we pretty much snap a line. So the pipe discharges here, and the new pipe picks up here, and we'll clean a straight shot all the way through. So we have flow in the stream. We want to make sure that the stream is, has, all the sediment is out. It'll free flow from end to end.
Do streams ever get back to a natural state where they take care of themselves, or is this just part of being industrial, in a town?
I couldn't tell you.
Can't we get some of those self-cleaning streams?
Well, I think streams naturally build up accumulation of things and overflow.
Right.
That's the natural state of things, which we don't like.
Anything additional? Steve?
So I'm curious about the $100,000 from last year. Why did it go unexpended? Did you have trouble finding the labor to do it, or?
Typically, what we do is this, in a perfect world, and what we've been doing for a very long time, is this $200,000 will be applied to next year's project. The problem is, last year, we spent the $200,000 plus portion of the appropriation from last year. So we're kind of going backwards now. Like I said, not too long ago, we were paying $200 a linear foot, and now we're paying closer to $400. So pretty much that program is cut in half. So that's why I'm telling, and I think you folks got the backup, shows a map with all the dots on it. That is very aggressive because that was based on, some previous cost estimates. So that will eventually be stretched out. Every year as we get more data from doing the projects, we just, if it's 475, that program just gets pushed out another year. Or we try to do first come, first serve, because, people's backyards are getting flooded out. And there's no real my flooding is worse than your flooding. I mean, when your backyard is flooded and your basement's getting water, everyone's unhappy. So we look at it and then we queue it. So it's like, you come to us, we put it in the next following program, and that's the way, and we were pretty much getting close to running out of stuff until the last few years, when we had all this flooding. And so that's kind of where we are now.
Thank you.
Roger?
But I think that kind of begs the question that's like, is this enough?
Oh, no, we could always spend more. And that was the same question the select board had. It's, you know, it's,
That's Mike Hardy's answer. There's never enough.
Well, anyway, the only reason is a practical one, is if you ever fall so far behind, you don't want to fall too far behind. But I guess you would alert us if you were, so.
yeah, I think if, you know, as things, hopefully things dry out a little bit and, you know, have less complaints and then get caught up.
Thanks.
Okay,
Move to approve?
Second.
thank you. This is Article 7-7, drainage repair and stream cleaning for $200,000. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? 10-0-0. All right, now we're Article 7-8, the vehicle replacement program. Roger?
Yes. So this is $662,000 to replace 5 vehicles that have reached the end of life. Backup is fairly good pictures of both the current conditions of the vehicles and the replacements. I'll probably let the department itemize the things. Some of the replacements appear to be quite expensive in terms of, you know, you buy a truck and then you have to buy a lift for the back, or at least one of them has sort of a full repair shop on the back of it, so it's more expensive than the truck itself. But it's all necessary equipment for maintaining water, cemetery water, and the other infrastructure in Burlington. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Anything additional? I'm sorry, anything additional on that, or? Okay. Discussion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
One quick question. Do you have, I didn't see this in the backup, how old the 5 vehicles are?
Yep. So I don't know, do you have similar, do you get the cap, like a 10-year?
I don't think I have that.
So the C5 vehicle is a 2015, 2015. H4 is 2012. M3 is a, I think that's replacing, not sure. That date's off. It's one of the old Ford Rangers, so probably like a 2009 or so.
I think it's an 11.
Or a 2011, okay. T1 is a 2009 Ford Ranger. W2 is a 2012.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we have a motion on this already. So this is Article 7-8, vehicle replacement for $662,000. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? That's 10-0-0.
See how easy it is to spend real money? For real
Yes,
things?
and the backup really does it for you. Next is warrant Article 8, acceptance of Chapter 90 money. Roger?
Yes, so Chapter 90 is a state program where they give municipalities funds to maintain roads and infrastructure. This is in the amount of $1,058,711.92, and it goes into the funds to pave our streets and roads. The annual thing, this town meeting just has to vote to accept the money, and it's not very controversial. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Anything else on this non-controversy?
Motion to approve, Mr.
Second.
Does the legislature, it says it's dependent on the legislature passing it. Do they ever not pass it?
I don't recall.
I'm not aware of, not my, 25 years of working in local government, has
So do you,
It fluctuates sort of with the economy, but I don't remember it ever being.
the letters are pretty dependable on the amounts, I guess is my question. Okay, great.
I'm sure they quibble on the amount before it gets to the point where they tell us what it is.
That's what I'm hoping. Okay, this is for, we had a motion on this, right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. This is for warrant Article 8, acceptance of Chapter 90 money in the amount of $1,058,711.92. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? That's 10-0-0. Next is Article 9, MWRA, INI debt service. Roger.
So this is $107,975 to transfer from the Sewer Inflow and Infiltration Fund to pay the FY25 debt service on the MWRA INI loans. We've got a bunch of, I think they're zero-interest loans, but pay our debts. So subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Anything additional? Okay. Discussion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. This is for warrant Article 9, MWRA, INI debt service for $107,975. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? It's 10-0-0. Next is Article 10, Sewer Enterprise Fund. Roger.
Right, so this is an annual item of $6,453,000 transfer from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to fund the water and sewer budget. This represents all the funds from water bills for the sewer component that go into the enterprise fund directly, and then town meeting has to authorize the transfer into the operating budget to fund the operating budget. This year, the amount raised from the sewer bills is not quite enough to fund operations, but there is a certain amount left over from previous years in the sewer enterprise fund. So this year, the transfer amount is $100,000 more than was collected from the sewer bills. And this is the lowest amount in the last 4 or 5 years that we've had to rely on so-called retained earnings that came from the previous amounts in the sewer enterprise fund. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Anything additional on that? Frank?
I'm just curious, the amount of money that we collect for sewer service, is that rate set by us or by the municipal downstream sewer services? No, all our outflow goes, through the state system, right?
Yeah, it goes through a number of towns and communities until it gets to Deer Island.
So what makes it more expensive?
We have a MWRA meter at the town line that they own so that they monitor flows from everyone. It's a share-based, so if every year, and it's not, water's pretty simple because they just divvy it up as a percent, but sewer, there's more complicated things like the amount of solids that are in it. So they have some algorithm of the amount of solids, the peak flow per month, because peak flows are a concern with it, and they assess every community based.
So is the rate of the assessment what made it cost more, or are we generating more?
So their MWRA goes up every year on what they assess us. Typically, I think it's around 3.5%, but every year it's somewhere between, say 3% and 4%.
Increase?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they have the same, just like us, they have operating budgets and that they're gonna pass on to us.
Thank you.
What is the balance in that enterprise fund? What will it be after this transfer?
About $2 million. About $2 million.
About 2? Okay.
Million.
Yes. $2 should be calling it close. All right, additional discussion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. This is warrant Article 10, transfer from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to the operating budget, $6,453,000. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstain? All right, 10-0-0. Next is warrant Article 11, transfer from water stabilization. Roger?
Right, so this annual item for $1,567,700 is a transfer from the Water Stabilization Fund to the operating budget. In January, an amount somewhat less than that was transferred from free cash into the Water Stabilization Fund. And these funds are needed to pay for the water supplies and infrastructure in Burlington. Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
And MWRA projects fees also are
Well, this funds the operating budget, which includes what we pay the MWRA.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anything additional on that? Okay, discussion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. This is for warrant Article 11, transfer from water stabilization in the amount of $1,567,700. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed? Abstained? 10-0-0. Next is warrant Article 13, the roads, parking lots, and sidewalk paving. Roger?
Right, so this is part of where the Chapter 90 money goes. This is $3.5 million to be bonded that covers paving of roads, parking lots, and sidewalk programs. There are individual programs that allocate the money to paving roads, paving parking lots, and maintenance and upgrade of sidewalks. This is a every other year article, and subcommittee voted 2-0 to support to keep our roadways and sidewalks in good shape.
Excellent. Anything additional on that?
I'll give you a quick breakdown. So every year, we get this every 2 years, and the breakdown is $2 million for roadway maintenance, parking lot resurfacing, $500,000, existing sidewalk rehabilitation, $500,000, new sidewalk construction, $500,000. This gets co-mingled with the Chapter 90. And if you're interested we have an interactive map on our website, so you can see what we've done and what we have programmed for the next 3 years, if you're interested in the different programs.
Great. Discussion on this? Roger?
Just a question, because I'm probably not clear on the relationship between the Chapter 90 dollars and this bonding amount. Does it mean that we actually spend the sum of those two on roads?
Yep.
Great.
So the Chapter 90 is pretty much dedicated to roadway, and then this is split up for the, different parking lots and sidewalks and whatnot.
Great, thanks.
Steve?
You give the statistics of how many miles of sidewalks, but how many miles of roads do we actually have?
We have about 100 miles of road.
Okay.
And I think sidewalks
It
combined.
says 50 for sidewalks
Yeah, I think
here.
it's 50. Yeah, you were on the sidewalk committee, yeah.
Yeah, but the description had the miles in here. It just didn't have the road mileage. Thanks.
Rob?
How do we decide which sidewalks get done and when was the study done?
Sorry?
How do we decide what new sidewalks get put in and when was the study done to decide that?
So there was the sidewalk study has been ongoing, I think, forever. There's been different policies since the 90s. Steve was on the sidewalk committee that made recommendations. So the select board in,
Last year.
was it last year? They approved, 2022, there was a sidewalk program that was approved, and it was both for new construction, which gets stretched out pretty far. It goes out to 2035. And then for rehabilitation, most of the rehabilitation is, the highway division has a sidewalk paver. So the way it works is, if there is a sidewalk that touches a road that gets disturbed while we pave, like if the berm is connected to the sidewalk and when we rip out the berm, we destroy the sidewalk, we'll take care of that under the paving program with the funds that are allocated under this article. The highway, what they'll do is if there's a side road, there's a grass strip, small, a small enough road they can handle. They're not gonna do like Cambridge Street, but if there's a grass strip, and they can handle that road, they will rip out that sidewalk and put it in, typically after we've been through paving. So the road's paved, they go in after a year or two, and they'll put a new sidewalk in. So the list is, it should be part of your backup. There's a list with a map that shows, it's a hit list, because already, it was very aggressive, and I'm not quite sure where the highway is. I think they may be a couple streets behind. We were lucky enough to receive a complete streets grant for Blanchard Road, $500,000. And that will fund half the project, because the Blanchard Road is over $1 million for that sidewalk. Next up would be South Bedford Street, and that's probably a couple years out, because what we try to do is take that money, the $250 a year, and bank it. So, we get out of this $3.5 million, we'll take $500,000, put it away, and that will be allocated, well, it would have to be the next group, next chunk of money will get allocated to the next sidewalk project. So that's how we kind of break it down. That makes sense.
Is the goal to have sidewalks on every street?
No, it's not. The priorities for new sidewalks would be what was approved by the select board. So it wouldn't be every street in town. Most of it's main streets.
Okay.
Mike?
Just a kind of a related question. If a resident were to discover a pothole somewhere on one of our roads, what should they do to address that?
You can call the DPW. And then the highway division, and the highway division is very proactive. They're always out, and if they see a pothole, they have handheld data collectors to put it in, and it's like real time. Then one of the foremen will put it on a list, and the pothole will get addressed. If someone calls in, same thing. One of the foremen or the superintendent will put it on a list, and they'll take care of it.
Thank you.
So we don't own Cambridge Street or around the off-ramps.
Heard that one coming.
You can call anyway.
Question has come up before.
Sometimes it spills up its rock and lands in the hole.
Yeah.
I'll give you the state number.
All right, Steve.
Just for the Blanchard Street construction, considering that's so tight, are you going to have to take land, or how is that going to work?
On Blanchard Road?
Yeah.
Well, Blanchard is all over the place in terms of width, so we're going to make it a consistent width all the way down. So there will be some portions of the road will be narrowed, and other portions we'll have to do a little bit of a block widening, but it's all within the right-of-way.
Okay,
You're not going to take any land.
great. It's good to see that one finally get addressed. Thanks. Motion to approve?
Thank you. This is warrant Article 13, the roads, parking lots, and sidewalk paving for $3.5 million. Raise your hand if you're in favor, please. Opposed? Abstain? It's 10-0-0. All right, next is warrant Article 14, sewer pump station. Roger?
Right, so this $2.5 million is proposed to be bonded to fund the reconstruction of the Grandview Pump Station. The design was funded by and authorized in the May 2022 town meeting, and this is one of the older pump stations that it's time to get a real upgrade. So this is a complete reconstruction, as I recall. The subcommittee voted 2-0 to support the article.
Anything additional?
So we have 14 sewer pump stations in the system, and life of a pump station, design life's 50 years. They were all built in the 60s and 70s, so 2010 was our first big rehabilitation, which was Terrace Hall. That was $8 million. 2012, we had a study of the entire inventory of pump stations. We came up with a priority list. So over the course of, since then, we've been kind of picking away at it. And we're down to, if you look at our 10-year capital, we have Grandview, which we're asking for $2.5 million to do. And then next year, we're coming back for the Douglas pump station, which is $4.2 million, and that will be the last big-ticket item for a while. Then after that, if you look at our capital plan, we're asking for $120,000 on alternating years to start doing pump station and generator upgrades and maintenance. So all the big-ticket items are done until we have still a couple pump stations like Brookside and Belmont, which aren't undergoing major renovations because we've taken care of those guys in the past, whether it was under an article or with operating budget.
Additional discussion?
Move to approve?
This is warrant Article 14 for the Grandview Sewer Pump Station, $2.5 million. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? It's 10-0-0. Next is warrant Article 15, MWRA Phase 2B. Roger.
Let's see if I can do justice to this. So MWRA Phase 2B is to include the completion of all of the work necessary to complete the connection to the MWRA up Middlesex Turnpike, including the decommissioning of the Vine Brook Water Treatment Plant, capping the wells in the Vine Brook, and any other work related to this transition to the MWRA. The funding of it, so the original funding of Phase 2A included $4.6 million of a entrance fee into the MWRA. The MWRA ultimately waived the requirement to take that payment. So there is $4.6 million remaining of the original Phase 2A authorization. This warrant article is only to amend the authorization to use this for use the remaining funds for Phase 2B. And that's probably all I have to say about it, other than the subcommittee thought that was a good use of unspent money to finish up the MWRA. There may be more detail from the department.
Would you like to add anything?
Happy to answer any questions.
I feel compelled to ask. It seems like a suspicious coincidence that the amount left over is exactly what we need for this. Is it just a coincidence, or?
Yeah, it's pretty coincidental. Yeah,
Okay. I'll accept that as it stands. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be just to clarify for me, but, so the Phase 2B that we're talking about now, we really have to do this in order to get right. There's not much of an option here. We're never going to have enough water.
Correct. This will get us the 6 million gallons per day.
Right.
So the 2A was essentially the pipe from Arlington, Lexington line
Right.
to Adams Street, and now this is the final link from Adams Street to up Middlesex Turnpike to Mall Road, and that linkage will allow us to accept 6 million gallons a day if we were to need it from the MWRA.
So to be clear, Mr. Chairman, here, so
Yes.
the amount we're borrowing is less than we might have had to because we got this offset from the previous 2A, but the 2B phase project, we're going to borrow whatever the remainder is, but this has been on the books for a while, so it's still a lot of money, but it's going to go into the debt.
I want to make sure I understand that. You're saying the total cost of 2B is more than this 4.6?
No.
Or am I not?
The real cost is, but we're getting that offset from 2A.
Sure.
So the borrowing amount is the 4.6 or whatever it is.
So
Yeah.
previously, town meeting authorized the borrowing of the entire amount.
Right,
We actually only borrowed part of it.
right.
This is, in order to finish the project, we will have to borrow the rest of it.
Yeah, there's no new borrowing per se that's being authorized. It's just reallocating what it's for.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Wait a minute, wait, the 4.6 is going to be new borrowing though, right?
Yes, but it's,
It's part of the original borrowing that we asked for. Because we received the 4.6 million that we were intended to pay that was waived, we still have that money, we never borrowed it.
Right.
So what we're asking is, the article is very specific to reference 2A, and whenever we borrow money, they are very specific that we spend it on the purpose. So what they're asking us to do is go back and now adjust the article and say, we want to spend that money on, it's already been authorized by town meeting, now we want to spend it on phase 2B.
Okay, what's the vote required for this?
Two-thirds, right?
two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
Essentially a reauthorization.
Yeah, all
So
right.
it's not distinct really from just
Right.
asking for.
Right. In some sense, the previous borrowing that was authorized isn't being done, and this is authorizing new borrowing. It happens to be
Right.
the exact same amount.
If the previous authorization didn't list the phase, it just said MWRA connection, we wouldn't have to do this, we could just go ahead with the project.
Okay.
One more time where we label things too aggressively.
Hey,
Next
this
time we
is
should
kind
just
of
use the
either,
word
though,
stop.
Referencing the fact that we saved $4.6 million is kind of just decoration on the fact that we're asking for $4.6 million for 2B. I mean, it makes people feel good, but it's not essentially part of the.
But we really did
Yeah.
save
Oh, we did save
4.6 million, because
No, we did.
if the MWRA hadn't waived it,
Yeah.
we would have to have new borrowing.
Phase 2B was always part of the project as presented by Mr. Sanchez in the total package when he presented the whole project, so. We don't have to ask for that
Oh, so
authorization.
we already authorized 4.6, but now it's a different form. Okay, got it? Yep.
Where I think we're all on the same page here. All right.
What a coincidence.
It's still very coincidental, though.
Well,
Mike?
the price is, the engineer's estimate is not 4.6, it's 4.59.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not identical.
Don't
All right.
confuse us.
Did you have something, Mike?
Yeah, so as part of this, when we cap the wells in the Vinebrook aquifer, I guess, that's all where it's kind of a big marshy area. What's going to happen with that property? Is it conservation land? Is that what it is now? Is it just going to be like left to nature preserve? Is there any plans or change in the usage of that area?
Anyone?
The well field itself is all conservation. I mean, there's not much we can do with that itself.
Because it's marshy.
Yeah.
It's very wet.
Mhm.
Okay. No, so it's just going to be town of Burlington land that's sort of just conservation area.
It's a huge portion of the wetlands on the FEMA maps, and there's really not a lot we can do with it. I know there's been discussions of possibly a marsh walk type thing, for conservation, just different ways to utilize the nature aspects of it.
Okay.
Grow marshmallows.
Continue to be marshy.
Be in the rec plan.
Swamp day.
Don't get us started again.
Overlook and underlook.
Move to approve?
Thank you.
Second.
Move on?
Thank you. All right, this is warrant Article 15, MWRA Phase 2B for $4.6 million. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? 10-0-0. And finally, warrant Article 16, Mill Pond PFAS rosin replacement. Roger.
Hip, hip, hooray. Time to answer a question from a couple of weeks ago. So this is $1.2 million to fund the replacement of the filtering resins that are used in the PFAS filters at Mill Pond. I think I'll just defer to Mr. White to explain the details, but this amount of money does include replenishment of the resins and disposal of the resins, including transportation costs and other things. And the wild card question is, how often are we going to have to do that? So,
Did you have a vote?
we voted 2-0 to support.
Thank you.
Sure. So the pilot program that we did prior to approval to construct these filters with DEP, small scale, those the estimated life out of those, based on the use of the plant, was about 18 months, maybe 20 months. But 18 months was a good conservative estimate. Obviously, going from little small tubes to giant vessels is, you know, there's always a question mark there, so we're still kind of in the phase of tracking the PFAS through it. There still hasn't been any breakthrough through the first set of filters yet, so we're able to get some sampling with the test ports that are intermediary in the vessels. But the 18 months, so far, from what we could tell from the first sample port, it looks to be matching close to the pilot program. So 18 months would put us, you know, we started running them in the end of July, so 18 months is going to put us at around January. If we don't comply with it, you know, we're going to exceed PFAS levels and have violations and possible fines. So I don't know that we can really push it off a year. So the ask is to ask for it now, just in case the need comes up during this next fiscal year that we need to replace it. So the way DEP has approved us to operate, they want us to replace 3 filters at a time. So when the lead filters, they always kind of want a backup set of filters. So once we get to certain levels, exceedance levels basically, for lack of a better term, in the first lead filters we're supposed to schedule and have that replaced and swap the flow to the lag filters, instead of replacing the media in all 6. So this is just for 3, every 18 months, from what it's tracking for so far. EPA has some new finalized regulations that they came out with a couple weeks ago that drastically reduced what DEP's limits were. So we're still trying to trend how that would match up with their guidelines. Presumably it's going to be a much shorter time than 18 months. Maybe it's a year. Maybe it's 8 months. It's not going to be longer. It's certainly going to be shorter.
What's the EPA standard versus the Mass standard? What's the numbers on those?
So they have it kind of broken down. Obviously, they have to complicate it a little more. They have 2 different other compounds, but essentially the big ones we're looking at is DEP allowed you an aggregate of the 6 to be under 20. EPA specifically with 2 have to be under 4.
4. So 20 went to 4.
Well, but it's different between 6 components and 2 components, but.
With other stuff, yeah, okay. Frank?
Do you have any more you want to tell us first?
Nope.
Yeah, so just a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to understand, so we have 3 lead and 3 lag filters, is that how it's set up?
Yes.
And do you rotate those, or do you just run the leads till they hit capacity and then you swap to the lags?
Just the leads.
All right, so the 3 will run them till we hit their capability, their absorption is no longer good enough. We go to the lags, and then we rebuild the leads with new media. And how long does it take to rebuild them?
So the resin is, you know, unless something changes, is readily available. So it should be, you know, line it up, well, you know, draft up the procurement documents, line it up. I believe, you know, within, you know, probably 4 to 6 weeks, we could have a delivery.
Okay, so it's essentially nothing, because you've got the other 3 that just came online.
Yeah, and they're not gonna let us go right to the limit either. So they're gonna have us go to approximately, at half the value, they're gonna make us start looking into doing the replacement.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get at actually is cost. So when the lead and lag rotate, but when the 3 lead ones hit their capacity, you have to swap them out, and you've got to replenish them, and the replenish is around 1.2 million with disposal. And the life of that right now might go from 18 months down to something less, say a year, something like that. So what it says is roughly every 12 months, plus inflation, we're looking at $1.2 million.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that, a lot of the variability, and, you know, if there's any questions, you know, there's a 20% contingency only because disposal regulations are very volatile, whether they'll allow it in landfills or it has to be incinerated. And then, so what happens now in the next year is...
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary to me because it's a little bit open loop. I assume MWRA absorbs all those costs on their own from the production of their water, and they probably have better water to work with in the first place.
I don't think they have PFAS in their water.
Yeah.
From the source.
Right.
They have other things. They're, you know, they have to fund, you know, lead and copper, so they have issues in some of their communities with lead, so they're trying to have loan and grant programs. So there's other capital costs that they're going to be incurring, not maybe specific to PFAS, but similar to the sewer assessment, the water assessment. They're hitting us with almost 4% increase every year.
But they're also requiring us to run Mill Pond to its capacity before they'll let us draw the equivalent water from the MWRA. Am I correct?
The Water Resource Commission is set to prioritize. I don't know if there's a difference in legality there, but
It's a little complicated. One of these days, I'd really like to figure out, you know, in a John Eiler spreadsheet fashion, assuming inflation and all this other stuff, at some point, there's probably a break point where Mill Pond might actually, even though we can't not use it, the fact that we own it costs us more to run than to buy it all from MWRA. I mean, that could happen.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely something on our radar and something I want to calculate as well. But because, you know, this proposed regulation was out, there's too much in the air to really...
Yeah, this one was a shocker, this last one that came out. But it's national, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be any choice in this. So one of these days, we probably ought to get a passage of time, break even, using Mill Pond at all versus not. And it could be, you know, it could be something we'll have to consider just for our own benefit. In other words, maybe it might be worth it to us to, you know, eat the sum of the sunk costs and switch. That could be 5-10 years away. The life of Mill Pond as a plant, you estimate at what, another 15 years?
I think it was almost completely remodeled in 2008, as I recall.
So it's got to have at least a 20-year life, I would think.
I would say hopefully more than that.
All right, so this is a discussion for a rainy day, no pun intended, but the trend is not good on the source of the water that we have. And I assume it's all Shawsheen water at this point?
Yes, the Mill Pond is Shawsheen water.
Okay, well,
So
I'm in favor of this. We got to do it. I would do it earlier rather than later. Set the money, you know, get the money bonded, have the ability to buy the materials as soon as you think you need it. There could be a lead time on the materials.
the only thing I'll add to that is, you know, there is a possibility because all these places are going to have these type of treatment facilities, so that there might be more companies coming in and driving the cost down of resin, so because of so much demand now. We're also going to be looking at, in the capital plan, a few years out, I think you see a pre-treatment system that would like to investigate at Mill Pond. So the vessels were sized for activated carbon, but because of the TOC in the water, they didn't work, and it was absorbing the TOC and not the PFAS. So if we can pre-treat the TOC, and we can switch to carbon, at this time, I believe, is roughly half the cost of resin. There's also another alternative. I think I'm going to probably propose in the near term a pilot program for either, I think around 50,000, same thing as how we piloted the resin. But DEP recently in the last year approved a type of clay to absorb PFAS, which is a lot less volume than the activated carbon, but on similar costs. So that could be even more. So I think over time, there's going to be, it's possible that the new technologies, because so many people are dealing with it, are going to.
It's worth trying to keep investigating and researching that because, you know, just the way we're running it now, it would look like the costs are going to get up there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to add that the town's also a party to all PFAS class action lawsuits that are moving through the court system. And, you know, I'm not going to accuse Hanscom Air Force Base of being our source, but we did an informal.
It's close by, though.
Sort of check on that. And, you know, Brian and I had spoken to the folks at Hanscom who are in charge of cleaning up Hanscom's PFAS problem. And we're very hopeful that the work that they do there will lessen the amount of PFAS that's making it into our water supply at their source. Again, I'm not accusing them of being our source, but
They are upstream from us.
you know, I think there's a lot of other things out on the horizon that are out there that could help us with some of this in the future. And I think, you know, our next step was to set up a meeting with the, you know, the federal delegation, just to sort of, Hanscom is looking for more money to clean up quicker, so we could probably use some help from our federal delegation to try to accommodate them with some more funding, and it will ultimately benefit, you know, Bedford and Burlington upstream.
Great. Rob?
What's our PFAS level now?
Right now, I mean, it's non-detect coming out. So by the time, so it's still non-detect coming out of the lead vessels. At the port, that's 20% down. I believe it's 39, but there's still media in the lead filter. So leaving the lead is non-detect, and then it still goes through that whole redundant lag filter. So it's.
Oh, really? You pump it through the whole, all 6 of them?
Yep.
Oh.
Undetectable.
It's doubly undetectable now.
It's bad. Okay, thank you.
Mike?
So on the PFAS removal, I may get the terms wrong, but I've heard like PFAS 4, PFAS 6. Then I was reading about the federal stuff, and they said, hey, you know, there's actually like thousands of types of PFAS. Do these filters target certain known things that we're going after, or is it capturing other types of PFAS?
The pilot studies that I think, I don't know how many, we didn't, like you said, there's hundreds, maybe thousands of different compounds. So what we looked at was, I think, about 40 of the ones that, somewhere around there that were, I guess, on their radar. They didn't obviously touch all 40. There's 6 we're currently under with DEP. The new federals repeat 4 of the same compounds and change up 2. So we have a total of 8 different PFAS compounds that will. But long story short, the resin seems to address most of the ones that we have in the water, or all of the ones in the water, I should say.
Is that, when the water comes through and it's going to be filtered, are those PFAS filters just part of the overall filtration, or are they filtering out all the other stuff that we don't want in the water as well? Or is there redundant?
Yeah, they do.
Systems.
They do. They will filter out other things. That's why we did, like the TOC. We had to use resin because of that. But one of the things, like we mentioned in the operating budget, the pre-filter unit costs. So DEP required us to install a pre-filter before the filters. Those are like a mesh style filter. So those, you know, their concern is that too much stuff is going to get into the resin and it's going to pick up that instead of the PFAS. So the water is about, you know, our treatment staff says it's cleaner than the water that MWRA
Cleaner than the
comes in.
water at what?
Then MWRA delivers to us. So it's you know, there's a cost to it, but it's
I mean, we process
very
it.
high quality.
We do a lot of processing.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional? Roger?
Move to approve?
Second.
Second.
It's like, what do you want?
Sonia was about to hit you. All right. This is warrant Article 16, Mill Pond PFAS rosin replacement for $1.2 million. Please raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstained? 10-0-0. All right, just double checking here. I believe that is all the DPW warrant articles. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your patience here.
Spot is on that Oxford trolley.
All right, oops.
We done.
Getting back to the agenda, almost done.
That's it?
Do we have any large project updates that people would like to give?
Yeah.
No? Okay. We'll move on to approval of the minutes then. We have the minutes that I sent out this afternoon. Are people ready to vote on that, or do they want to ponder them some more?
They looked okay to me.
All right. All right. We'll have a motion then, please.
I did find a grammar error. There's an extra "to" preposition in the middle of a sentence.
Can we live with it? All right. All right. As long as you feel the intent is clear, we'll live with it.
Wasn't the wrong two.
Yes. I hate homonyms.
Second.
All right. All right, so this is the approval of the April 10th minutes, our most recent meeting. Those in favor, raise your hand, please. You're going to make it hard. All right. Whoops. Opposed, abstain?
I have to abstain, I wasn't.
That's fine.
I'm supposed to abstain, I wasn't there, but.
That, you were perfectly fine there. All right, hold on a second. All right, so that's, should be 901. Let's just make sure the computer agrees. I'm sorry, 8, no.
Yeah.
Yes, 901. There was a little lag there, sorry. Very good. All right, is there anything else that folks would like to discuss tonight? Mike?
Just a question for next week. So we're going to cover some public safety warrants. We already reviewed those, so are we doing a short introductory presentation, or are we just saying here's the warrant?
So I think we'll do it just like we did the rec ones that we discussed. Anything we discussed previously, unless people want to discuss it, we don't need to re-present it by any means. So yes, our next meeting is May 1st. We'll be doing the public safety warrant articles, which, as Mike pointed out, we discussed. We have the various Town Hall 1 articles. I sent an email that enumerate all this on the 18th, so you can go back and review that if you like. And we also had a number of education tabled warrant articles that we'll be covering.
Yeah, just
We had originally said that they're continued to May 8th, but I believe everyone was good with May 1st. So the moral of the story is, and we'll cover the ones we just tabled tonight. So if everything goes smoothly, we'll be through all the warrant articles and all the budgets at our next meeting. So that's how things should go. I would still keep May 8th blocked out on your calendar just in case, but in theory, we shouldn't need to meet on May 8th, and then town meeting is the following Monday. All right, so looking good.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We'll take that. All right, and we're adjourned.